of Bob, his wife, Ann, and all of his family, friends, and fans around the world. Those of you who may not have had the pleasure of getting to know Bob Babbitt, I'd like to say a few words about him. Bob Babbitt is a big man with a big heart, a twinkle in his eye, and a sly, mischievous grin. He's one of those rare people that once you meet him, even for a few moments, you feel that you know him, and you can never forget it. Once you've heard him play, you know him as well. And I can guarantee that every one of you, whether you are aware of it or not, have definitely heard him play. So you all know him too. He's one of the most recorded bassists of all time, and the list of hits he's played on is absolutely staggering. Cool Jerk, Midnight Train to Georgia, Mercy Mercy Me, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, Tears of a Clown, and Every Kind of People are just a few of my personal favorites. And no bass player can forget Dennis Coffey's Scorpio, a 1971 instrumental hit that featured Bob playing the longest bass solo in the history of pop music. Despite all of his accomplishments, he's a very humble man, and he speaks often of the team mentality that makes playing music special. He was born Robert Ritenour in Pittsburgh, and his musical influences range from the gypsy music of his parents' Hungarian heritage to jazz bassists like Ray Brown and Charles Mingus, and especially the R&B and soul music of the day. At 17 years old, he traded his upright bass for an electric and never looked back. He moved to Detroit in the early 60s and started working in nightclubs and studios, playing on records in an era where backing musicians rarely, if ever, got credit for their contributions. As he continued to get more recording work, he began to encounter some of the musicians who worked for Motown Records, also known as Hitsville, USA. These elite players included Joe Hunter on keyboards, Benny Benjamin on drums, and occasionally the great James Jamerson on bass. Jamerson's bassist for Motown, and the acknowledged master of R&B bass, but he was also notorious for his erratic behavior and not always showing up on time or showing up at all. Lesser men would have been intimidated by the mere presence of Jamerson, and it is a tribute to Bob's sense of self, his confidence in his abilities, that he was able to not only fill in ably for Jamerson when needed, but earned his respect as well. They even played together on Agent 00 Soul by Edwin Starr, a Nashville native. When Motown started calling Bob for sessions in 1967, he was more than ready to fill those big shoes and create his own legacy. His first session for Motown was with Stevie Wonder, and the first song they cut was We Can Work It Out, and work it out he did. Playing on hit after hit and becoming part of the legendary Funk Brothers, who were inducted as a group into the Musicians Hall of Fame in 2007. Bob handled the pressure of replacing the world's greatest bassist on his home turf with class and composure. The fact that all this was happening at a time when racial tensions were high is yet another testament to Bob's ability to transcend barriers. Motown never gave out gold records to studio musicians, so his already impressive career stats would be that much higher if they had. I can still remember the excitement in the Nashville bass community when we heard that Bob Babbitt had moved to Music City. What a pleasure it was to get to know him. He refused to let any of us put him on a pedestal, and right away he was simply one of us. He was just one of us that had happened to play on more hit records than the rest of us put together. And it says a lot about our city that when he moved to Nashville in the mid-'80s, he stayed and has made this his home ever since. When I asked Bob to sit in as a special guest with my all-bass orchestra in 2004, he jumped right in, and we all had a great time. We played Scorpio with an even longer bass solo, and Edwin Starr's Bore, and it was an experience none of us will ever forget.
Right.
Bob's incredibly soulful playing truly defines the word that best defines what bass players do: groove. Bob's groove could not be denied, and it crossed all musical borders. That groove was the glue that held together thousands of recordings and made the whole world dance. It is very significant that Bob's is the first star on the Nashville Walk of Fame to be given to a backing musician.
Yeah.
I would like to accept this award on behalf of not only Bob and his fellow bass players around the globe, but on behalf of all the great musicians who have spent their lives making the stars sound good. That's what Music City is all about. I know Bob would want me to thank his wife Ann, family, all of his many collaborators, including the Funk Brothers, Stevie Wonder, and Phil Collins. I know he would thank Joe Chambers and the Musicians Hall of Fame, and all the great artists he's worked with over the years, and of course, Mayor Dean and the city of Nashville for this great honor. The late great Harlan Howard called country music 3 chords and the truth. I'd like to improvise on that just a little bit and say that Bob Babbitt changed the world with 4 strings and a groove. Thank you all very much.